actually the start of Series 3. So welcome, everybody. Today, a fantastic guest. I thought we'd get these guys on first. So Alexa and Glen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you much.
Hi.
Thank you for having us, and congratulations on getting to Series 3. Let's hope we don't mess this one up when you get to Series 4.
Well, exactly. We might just be stopping here. So these guys are on today because they work for the training shed, or they own and direct the training shed, and they do a Wellbeing Score, and so obviously this is being launched now, the new 2022 score. So you guys are going to talk us through what it's all about, what you guys are trying to do with it, and how it can impact us as an industry. So I guess probably the best thing to do is let you guys roll with it, and then we'll take it from there.
Cool. Well, probably the first question that anybody would ask is, what is it and where did it come from? More likely, where did it come from first? Well, essentially, it came from this kind of situation where we, pre-pandemic, had 4 training shed sites. And, having been in the industry for a long time, having been, members and users of gyms, we felt that there was some kind of disconnect between the customer and obviously the facility. And what I mean by that is that, coaches and facilities are there for one reason only. It's to help people. Yeah. You can't help people if you don't know what they need help with. And the other problem is that sometimes people don't know what they need help with. So, back in the day, do you remember we used to do the old blood pressure and, the proper full old MOT before they even let you into a facility, where now it's all gone to this self-cert. I'll just sign my name, and if something happens to me, it's my fault, which, to be honest, I think is completely irresponsible, and probably one of the biggest downfalls of our industry is that we need to change that. We need to get that back to where it was. And
I remember when I started at Spirit, it literally was you joined, then you had a full almost MOT before you were allowed to train in the gym, and you'd be getting members going, no, I don't need that. You go, well, I need to take blood pressure. We used to do the full bike test, we do skin fold calipers, the whole shit. It was a good hour with the client before we even wrote their program or let them loose.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Alexa, Alexa's head of coaching for the shed, and been there ever since she left university. We're from very similar backgrounds, which is probably why it never made sense to us in the way that it was going. It's that we're both ex-professional athletes, and Alexa's a footballer, so I'd say she was more professional than I was. But effectively, it's the backgrounds that we come from where data is key. Your performances. If football's easy, you just score more goals than the other team, you win. Whereas from athletics, if you jump higher, run faster, you're the best. And so from our point of view, understanding how we apply our training methodologies and all of the stuff that we've learned as athletes, as footballers, to Joe Public, because there's no difference. There's no difference between me, you, Usain Bolt, and anybody else in terms of our physical being. We are human beings.
Strange, though, but before we go on to, isn't it strange how that crossover's never really happened? Because all of us watching sport, I mean, I've played sport at amateur level, decent level amateur, but never to your guys. But it's slowly creeping into amateur sport, but not as fast as you would have expected it to, with all the data and all the tools that are available, whether it be from MyZone to Apple Watch, to all those things that we all wear, and we've got wearable trackers, everybody does them. But we don't use that data as we should do to allow people to get real effective training and results out of it.
Yeah, agreed. I think, like Glen said, coming from a sort of elite sport background with sports science degrees and things like that, that's all we sort of knew. And I know one of my biggest things when starting at the shed was bringing that research and the data and the information education side of things into the general public, because there is, like you say, such a big gap. A mismatch in providing the right information, because there is a lot out there. I don't think everything needs to be crossed over. You can almost go with too much in detail before looking at the big picture. So yeah, the Wellbeing Score was definitely our way to start that, bringing information and data through.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. Sorry, right? One of the things was to try and keep it simple.
Yeah.
Because even at the elite level, it's about the 1%. That's what we were talking about. It's 1%. Get the 1% right, and they will add up to 100%. And if you're lucky enough to do that, then good for you. But it's never that binary. So well-being, health and fitness, everything. Performances. Apart from Arsenal, I think, which unfortunately that's where Alexa comes from, so she can have that boast. But Arsenal's the only club that won every other game in the men's team. So that doesn't happen very often. It has happened, but it doesn't happen normally. And so effectively, to have perfection is just unattainable. And if people understand that, and sometimes I think we try and sell something that is aesthetically wrong, also morally unattainable, and fundamentally, you've got to understand that we are people, and we have lots of things that affect our well-being throughout the year. And we've just been through one of the worst periods ever with a pandemic, and even the fittest of the fittest people, Alexa and I, we suffered.
Yeah.
We didn't do as much as what we would normally do, because all of a sudden we had to look at our business and work out how to transfer it and change it and pivot and all those wonderful things that have actually come off good for us, but they did affect our well-being and our health and fitness. So the well-being score is about the basics and getting the basics right, and that is the same for us, normal people as we call ourselves, to elite athletes. Because if you can't get that base level of the foundation of the pyramid of performance right, then it's on shaky grounds, and it's like building a house upon a sand, as that song used to.
Absolutely. And what's the overall aim with the survey, guys? I mean, obviously we're getting the score and we're pushing it out to the wider group, but what are we trying to do with this survey from an industry point of view? What's the main aim here?
I think again, it started as internally in the shed. How do we provoke conversation from the word go with our members about their well-being and the other areas, not just the training fitness side of it, that we can get results from. But then me and Glen sort of sat in a room, and as you can imagine, we threw everything you can imagine into this wellbeing score. It went extremely in depth, and then we tapered it all back. And we realized there wasn't this sort of thing in the industry. So a real mission of what we're trying to do is understand what we call the state of the nation in terms of well-being. And then how do we affect it, and also how is what we're doing in the industry affecting the outcome. So the annual report is a big part in understanding the trends going forward, and what change we're actually making.
Absolutely. And in terms of who's surveyed on here, is it training shed members? Is it across the industry wide? What's the
a real mixture. So as you can imagine, when we started it in 2021 or 2020, the first bits of data were from, it did start more local to the training shed. We went out to our members and our sort of groups of people, but since then we've worked with various different companies, various different councils, sports teams, and it's been available as a free resource for anyone that's found it. So we've had people from all over accessing it through social media, so it's a real mixture of people.
And I love it, and that's why you guys are on here pushing it, because I think it's a real great way of getting data, so we can look at it as an industry and go, okay, where actually are we, rather than just making up that our members are happy, our members are achieving it. Actually, are they really? Where are they? What are they doing? What do we need to change in the industry? But the more people we can get involved in the survey each year, so 2023, we ramp up the numbers even more and ramp up even more, and we keep going like that to the point where we actually have a very detailed and real national survey of where our well-being is, and that's where we want to go. I think you guys have got, and we'll see this in a moment, we've got everything in this score that we need to understand where the nation is and the industry as a whole, and what changes we potentially need to make. So I think the more, whether it be independent clubs, franchise clubs, trusts, even your big David Lloyd, I think all of them should really be encouraging their members to get involved in this, so that the volume of data you guys have got I know you've got a lot of data anyway, but I can imagine probably making your lives even worse with adding more data into them. But I think the more data we have, the more serious a conversation we can have. And I know we talk in terms of the various different bodies and the influence they can have in power and things like that. But if we've got scores like this, then you've actually got evidence to then go, this is where we're at, and this is the change that's needed. It's a lot easier to manage those relationships, isn't it? So.
Yeah, totally. And look, let's be honest. We'll put it on here now. We want 1 million people to do this wellbeing score, and that's a big, hairy, audacious goal. But we are the training shed. This is the wellbeing score. The wellbeing score is not the training shed. This is our gift back to the industry. We want everybody to participate in it. Look, we keep hearing the 15%. I mean, I'm bored of it, if I'm being totally honest with you. I want to see something different. We keep seeing reports all the time coming through, the UK Active Daily Briefing, and all the data that's out there. And I'll be honest with you, I think, some of the stuff, is right. But are we measuring the right stuff? Are we changing what we're measuring? And I think we all have the power certainly within the independent gym section, even within the franchises. If we've got the coaches, we've got the passion, we've got the knowledge, and if we haven't got the knowledge, it's really easy to get the knowledge, by the way. And I think we've gone through the pandemic, and I don't think we've done ourselves any justice whatsoever. I think we need to step up, and we need to help change the state of the nation. And the NHS is in crisis. Why? It's because of the fundamental health and well-being knowledge of people. Now, whether we should be teaching that in school or whether it should be in gym, look, let's just not have an argument about where it needs to happen. Let's just make it happen. So the Wellbeing Score is available for anybody to work with. We will work with anybody, the big gyms, the small gyms, the independents. Personally, I think, if we can all just come together and survey it and see it for what it is, and I think you'll see it's clear today that, because some of these, national surveys, a national survey is 2,000 people, by the way. To me, that's a small number. We've got all you need for a national survey. That's all you need for a national survey, and all of a sudden it becomes, this is what the state of the nation is. Well, why don't we do something together, all come together and actually survey the nation? All those things that we've talked about before that we used to do before we went into to gyms. This is a quick, simple, accessible online tool. It's self-assessment, but which can also be used within gyms as an induction thing as well. But we are happy to work with anybody to get the data that I think we need to get in this industry to give ourselves the legitimacy, but also to come together and have a plan to actually make a difference. Otherwise, all we're doing is selling memberships. And I think fundamentally that's changed.
And just out of interest, if a club wants to get involved, we'll put the links at the end of the podcast, so people can see those links, and they can either get in touch with you guys directly, or they can just click on and get their members to fill that in. Because I think when does it all start again, or is it just literally it starts cracking on from now?
Yeah, it keeps going. It keeps going. So the Wellbeing Score is available for every individual out there to access through our website, like I say, which is the link we'll give you to put below. But I think importantly to note, it's not just for people that attend gyms. This is taking it back almost a step further, and this is overall wellbeing. So looking at the whole big picture before we even get to.
I think that's the important thing, isn't it, Alexa? Because you don't sort of want to know that whether it is 15%, 20%, whatever that percentage of people is at the gym. You don't want to know necessarily all of that, because you want a comparison as to what the nation is actually like. Because obviously we've now potentially got 80%, 85% that aren't training. They could be playing sport. They could be that's why that 15% doesn't work. But we want to know what they're up to as well, so that we can really get a decent. So it's trying to find ways of encouraging them to take part as well. But absolutely, I think it's a really valuable tool you guys are doing. I think it's great that you give it away free, so that everybody can get involved, and there's no excuses. And then we can actually look at something and go, okay, this is where we go. This is the talking points. This is where we go. This is what we need to do. So I guess from there, let's have a look at some of the scores. Let's have a look at this survey and then see where all the Wellbeing Score, and see what comes back.
Cool. So just as Alexa's bringing it up, fundamentally the Wellbeing Score is a 20-point questionnaire, self-assessment, as we said. It looks at movement, nutrition and health. All of the health questions are linked to the NHS guidelines, which, funnily enough, something like resistance, do two sessions of resistance training a week is an NHS guideline, even when we've surveyed people in the NHS and they didn't even know that. So again, it's education, bringing all this stuff to the fore. There's a few things in there that, maybe one question about 10,000 steps, which, I'll be totally honest and frank with you right here live, is that we don't agree with the 10,000 steps, because fundamentally it was a marketing Japanese pedometer. A lot of people know that as well. So it was made up, wasn't it? There was no science behind it. It was just a round number that made sense to get people exercising. It was easier to say 10,000 than 7,200 or 11. Yeah, it's like the 10,000 hours thing. And I did music when I was a kid as well. But 10,000 hours is a music study, right? 3,500 to 4,500 is sport specific practice.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So we got to use the right stuff. That's what we're getting on. So there is a 10,000 steps question in there, but fundamentally we don't massively agree with it. And I think you'll see from the data that it's actually quite hard to get 10,000 steps in every day. And it's not that the question's wrong, it's just the target's wrong, and there's actually no science behind it. So why don't we have a look at review? And that's something that we want to do with more data. But anyway, I'll leave that one where it is. But there are 3 sections, 20 questions. Really simple. It is basic, fundamental human health and well-being, what should we call them, skills, right? Or targets. You should be scoring, let's put the 10,000 steps to one side for a minute. You should be scoring 19 or 20 out of 20. It is not a well done, you got 10.
Okay.
All right, let me just pull it up. Cool. So this, you guys got the screen, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So this first slide just kind of summarizes the data. So as Glenn said, the term as it should be is what we call it, category. So this is your 19 or 20 out of 20. And you can see there the percentages in 2021 and 2022. So actually in 2022, there's been almost double the amount of people past the wellbeing score, which is brilliant. That's what we want to see. We want to see that number going up. As we go down the categories, we've got above national average, below, and wellbeing emergency. And as you can see in the wellbeing emergency, there has been a slight increase as well in the percentage of people that fit into that category, which is obviously not what we want. So generally what you can see from the spreader data there at the bottom is the curve this year has got flatter and wider. So we've had more respondents fit into the extreme categories at both ends, and then less in the medial bulk in the middle. So that's the general trend of what we've seen of the data this year.
I mean, it's really positive to see that the sort of 1920, the top bracket, go almost double.
Yeah, absolutely.
That shows an awareness, I guess, and it could be off the back of the pandemic. The awareness that we need to be healthier, we need to be doing more, and so that's shown an increase there. But it's, but I guess then you've got the scary things at the bottom. That
people have gone one way or the other, which is that's the problem. Is that, as Alexa said, the curve's flattened. So the average is, where it is, and it's got a little bit worse, but it's the extreme. So there's those people that have gone, do you know what, I need to do more, and they have, and you'll see in a minute by age, you'll see the people that have actually woken up and gone, do you know what, I need to look after myself. And if you think back to the pandemic, you can probably guess which age group that was or is. Yeah. But at the lower end, the wellbeing emergency, I mean, it's an absolute travesty to have anybody scoring below 10. But the fact that has increased as well. Look, all the data pods out there, and look, we've done statistics at university, so we've got a sample size that's increasing. We've got a different type of sample size. This is why more data will be better, but fundamentally, it hasn't moved massively from where it was last year. We've had over 5,500 people do it. We've got 180,000 data points. This is not a small survey. It is well over and above, and what would be classed as a national survey. So this is something that should be taken seriously. And like I said, the spread, the more people we can get to, the better picture we will get. But I'll be honest with you, it is a national survey for a reason at 2,000. It's that the statistics works, and I think the spread shows you what we're dealing with. And if you think about what we're doing with the gyms at the moment, it doesn't matter what people say. Some have gone back to 100%. They haven't, all of them. And we've got different people there, and people have stayed away, and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's a different industry to what it was before the pandemic, obviously.
Absolutely.
But we need to now make sure that we kind of do something about the people that we do see and try and make them healthier and better.
Just out of interest, before we go in, does this take into effect any demographic profiling, or is it literally just a wellbeing score? It doesn't really matter where they are.
So in 2021, the wellbeing report was simply the spread of data, and we looked at past percentages per question. Yeah. Whereas in 2022, this year, we've delved into age, gender, and training goal as well. So we've delved into those bits. We do have the capacity, this is preview for 2023, to go into location.
I think that'd be really fascinating to see whether you get a north-south split, or whether you get based on, because I could probably instantly, all of us could probably say, in a poorer area, potentially you may have a higher case of this sort of wellbeing emergency scores. It tends to happen in NHS problems and stuff like that. The poorer areas tend to be the less fit and less healthy. But it would be interesting.
Yeah. There'll be an awful lot of data points then.
There will be.
So I'm looking forward to that one.
That'll make your job easier.
But yeah, no, it's again, we're always looking to progress what we're reporting on. Demographics this year is a massive step. We get a lot more detail into actually what is changing. But yeah, looking forward to doing those ones next year.
And I probably shouldn't say this, but you're talking about pinpointing where well-being problems are. And we've always coined this term. We've got the unfit looking after the unwell, and I'm seriously talking about the NHS. We've actually done this with an NHS trust. We're not going to name it. If I tell you that their scores are below national average, I think that tells you enough. We don't look after people that are looking after us, and that's got to change as well. And whether it's wages or whatever else it is, fundamentally it comes down to health and well-being of people. And if you don't look after the people, first rule of life saving, isn't it? You've got to look after yourself first. And fundamentally, it's our responsibility to look after these people because they have the skills to look after everybody else. But they scored lower than the national average, which I think is really quite upsetting, if I'm being honest with you, because it just shows that disconnect more than ever. So, I'm not going to pinpoint the trust, but I'm pretty sure it would be fairly representative across the board because we know how hard they work and we know what they're doing.
Yeah, can you imagine working a 12-hour day, then someone saying you need to go in the gym? It's
you're just not going to do it, are you?
No.
But, yeah. So anyway, but there's loads of data. This is Alexa's PhD, by the way. So anybody who wants to help with that, if there's a university out there that wants to go over the data, we've got tons of it, and we want more of it.
Brilliant. So progressing on to age. Again, just the headlines on here, but we can see main statement there: overall well-being deteriorates by age. This is perhaps something we all guessed, but having it in black and white and obviously seeing those scores drop. I mean, last year there was a 5-point drop.
It's how early they drop.
Yes, yeah, you start to see the drop off.
You wouldn't necessarily expect a 36 to 45-year-old necessarily to not have a decent score because it's the health-wise, they don't really, as we all know, it's usually you're sort of 45 into your 50s as you start getting the more serious health issues, and yet the scores are dropping almost instantly from sort of 18 to 25 down, aren't they?
You're talking to the converted, though, aren't you? We're in the industry. It's that common sense argument that we always talk about. What we know. We're not normal, by the way, just so you know. We're not normal because we have done something that, 15% of us apparently, isn't there? So that's not a lot of people. And when you get to people like us, we're even less normal than the 15% because, we know what we know. So you've got to think about it outside of what we normally do. And I think that's the problem is that we always preach to the converted.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, you can see the general trend in 2021. There was about over a 5-point drop, whereas this year it has decreased down to a 3-point drop between the two extremes. So although it does decrease by age, as you can see, the older age groups have had the most positive change in wellbeing from 2021 to 2022. So like what we talked about, those being at risk with COVID and the pandemic, perhaps making a more mindful decision to look after the well-being and do something about it to change it. Starting the bottom left, the younger age groups reported better with health and movement. The older age groups excelled in nutrition. So again, doing the wellbeing score and having the 3 sections allows us to dig into, okay, it deteriorates by age, but what is deteriorating? So as you can see there, nutrition isn't actually deteriorating. The older age groups are doing better with their nutrition, whereas the health and movement side of things is where the drop-off is coming from.
Be interesting to see what would influence that, whether that be better education as you get older, you understand things better, or whether it's a simple matter of people have looked at it and gone, as you do get older, there's more of I need to look after myself, I'm going to start living healthy, I've got the money necessarily or potentially to eat better and healthier, or whether the youngsters are just like, I can't eat anything, so I will. I wonder if it's a mindset thing that does that, or whether it's a conscious decision to eat better.
I'd say a big factor would be time as well. So as you can see in the amount of improvement, so this graph on this side here, the biggest improvements were again the both extremes of the age groups, whereas those busy workers, parents, things like that, Yes, they have improved over the year, but by smaller amounts. So yeah, one of my hypotheses would be time.
No, that's a very good point.
And cost now, I think, is one of the major points. And convenience is always a key. And I think everything you said, to be honest, Ryan, was a valid comment. And that's the thing, is it's good discussion straight away. We could spend an hour on this slide alone, I think.
Just out of interest, I'll tell you what would be, you might find next year, because of the cost of living crisis, this may change drastically.
Mm-hmm.
Quite possibly.
Yeah,
be interesting to see at the end of next year when you release it, to see how the cost of living, obviously, as we all know, healthy foods are far more expensive than they're not so healthy. So it could be interesting to see how the score's affected on the nutrition side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this was one of the major things with the Wellbeing Score for us, is it provokes conversation. We initially thought of that to the individual member coming in the training shed, but now this provokes conversation everywhere. And like I say, putting it down to things that are going on in the world compared to individual health and fitness trends, compared to anything, we can really map that out and delve into it. So yeah, we, as Glenn said, we can talk about these slides for hours.
And I think the great thing to see here is that the 76-year-old age group, as Alexa was saying, that's the COVID, kind of wake up call of, oh my God, I need to be healthy, I need to look after myself, which is great. We just need to kind of, backfill the other age groups and just say, look, guys, just because you don't, and we are so reactive as a nation, as a species. I think we're, oh well, I'm all right, and I'll just keep going until something's wrong. It's like, why can't we be part of a preventative solution, rather than a reactive solution? Because most people go to, oh, I'm getting married, can you get me fit? I'm going to go and do or we have to set these crazy targets of, I'm going to do a marathon. Have you done a 5K? No, I haven't. So why don't we start smaller? It's that kind of
couch to marathon.
Completely. We've had it. We've had people come in with 3 weeks and they've gone, I need to do a marathon. I mean, the thing with us though, and the way that our coaches are programmed and taught, is that they just turn around and go, no, sorry, we can't do that. It's not possible. So, and it's having that confidence to be able to do that, because there's that balance, isn't it, between what a customer wants and actually a business surviving. But we fundamentally believe that it is wrong to take someone's money if it's not possible to get that thing. And the amount of things that we see out there, especially with the Instagrammers and all this stuff, it's like, oh, do this for 6 weeks and you'll look like this, and everybody knows that it's wrong. I mean, how can we get away with that as an industry? How can we accept that as an industry? So I think education is key. Education is absolutely fundamentally key. And I think, teaching people how to coach people for well-being is really the future of where our industry needs to go. And
it's getting people to understand that message as well, because quite often, I mean, my lad's 17, and obviously he'll look at people and look at a certain body image and go, that's where I want to be, without realizing that person's probably on plenty of gear to get to where he is, and that's why he looks like he is. That's not a natural body physique. That's not a natural way to live. You don't know what he's giving up. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes it's that education to get people to understand and go, actually, what is normal fit as well, to sort of what is healthy fit, what is normal fit, rather than everybody trying to aspire to be these fitness models, which let's be honest, is quite often unattainable, because for them it's a full-time job. Like Alexa was saying, you don't have kids to look after, you don't have a job to do, I had a guy explain to me when I started doing mini triathlons, and he said to me, Ryan, don't expect to win. Because obviously being competitive, I was like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to train hard, I'm going to win. And these were only local ones, not the sort of level you guys were doing. But he goes, don't expect to win, because he goes, you've got 3 kids, a business, and he goes, the guy you're competing against is training 2-3 hours. He hasn't got anything else but triathlon. So you're never going to beat him. So you need to understand what the level is. And I think that's what this sort of education does. It encourages people to understand what wellness is, what being healthy is, what being fit actually is, rather than trying to aspire to these people up.
Absolutely. I think the hardest thing for me with coaching is getting the buy-in from your clients to trust you that it will happen. People want results immediately. People want to see results as soon as they start, which is only natural. We're built like that as humans, but consistency is key. I mean, my clients must be bored of me saying it, but if you just do the consistent things well, then you're going to get those results quicker, but you're also going to see changes in the time.
Yeah.
Which is another reason we do the Wellbeing Score as part of the induction, is because someone signs up for a membership, they start a training program, or they start working for a client. It's going to take them time to see those physical results. It's going to take them time to increase their strength, or run quicker, or whatever their goal may be. Whereas they might see improvements in how they feel, how their skin is, how their hair is, their digestion, anything like that. They might see instant results from these wellbeing scores. So it acts as almost like a buffer in the start process as well, to help people see results quicker.
Yeah, and the key here is that, look, at 14 to 17, you're still well off the 20. Okay, now, there's the resistance sessions, resistance, weights, whatever you want to call it. Resistance is resistance. Doesn't mean weights. Resistance can be a press up, a body weight movement, and all kids should start with body weight movements. I mean, even this month, I've been contacted by 5 parents asking about whether their kids, what protein should their kids be taking at the age of 13, and I'm like, what is going on? And there's people that are empowered, that are respected by parents, respected by these parents have obviously got a little bit about themselves, because they've gone, that doesn't sound right, I'll go and ask someone else.
Yeah.
But they're in positions of responsibility, and they're telling kids at the age of 13 to take protein, and you're just like, right, tell you what, let's go right back to the beginning. What did you have for breakfast? Oh, what? Sorry, what was that? Crunchy nut cornflakes? Right, hang on then. Let's have a think about it. Not that that's a bad thing, but all in measurements and stuff. But effectively, let's have a look at the fundamentals. And what you can see here by this, and this is the worrying thing, is that at 14 to 17, you're still not hitting that 20.
Yeah.
And then it gets worse, which basically tells us what? It tells us that education is not sticking. So you would at least hope that it would stay the same, really, because you know what you know. So really what this is a default of people just getting older and getting worse. So there's no proactivity, there's no understanding, there's no education. And fundamentally, look, 14 to 17, this score is kind of, one of the things, I'm sure Alexa will talk about this in a bit, but, effectively, we need a junior wellbeing score, and that is in the development plans for next year, because, what's right for a kid and what's right for a 76-year-old or a 45-year-old, once you get into adulthood, we want to keep the basics, but kids are different. And,
do you know what's scary, Glenn, is my son's 17. The moment he started A-level, PE stopped. Work that out. I just we build them through. We pull them up to do PE every week. I mean, my daughters do twice a week, so they've got 2 sessions a week of different sports. As soon as he started A-levels, that's it, bang, nothing. They're getting a free time and study time and everything else. Now, I'm not saying he comes to the gym 4 or 5 times a week with me, so he's getting his exercise, he plays cricket, he does all that. So, but how many kids are out there don't do that because their parents aren't in sport? And you can understand then why this score isn't hitting 19, 20, because you're sort of going, well, okay, they've got all this free time. When I was at school, I'm probably older than both of you, but when I was at school, even A-levels, we had PE. As part of general studies, I think they called it. Yeah. We had PE, and it just kept people active. It kept you learning, kept you understanding that sport or physical activity was important. And now we don't have that, yet we have more data, more knowledge, more understanding of what health is, yet we're doing less.
Yeah, and look, I'm just going to say, I've got a 6-year-old, and there's a whole host of things that needs reviewing, and I think the data that we're collecting will help to make sensible decisions. But a 6-year-old that does 2 lots of PE a week, that's wrong. Should be PE every day for an hour, and that's my honest. No one can argue otherwise, and I will sit there all day long and give you all the benefits.
Because what are they missing out on at that age?
And it's not about sport, and that's what we have to be. And look, Alexa and I are from sports, but we're not. We're published authors of books and journals and all sorts of stuff. This is about activity and well-being and getting people to do the right stuff. But also language is key. My 6-year-old, when he was 5, would come home and say, "That's a bad food, Daddy," and I'd be like, "No, it's not bad food. Food is food. There's no good. There's no bad. You need to get balance." And when I was, an athlete, it was 80-20 rule. 80%, do this, 20%, knock yourself out, do what you want to do, but understand that if you don't fuel yourself correctly, that's not going to have any positive effect. I was a bit too extreme. I was like, right, I'm not doing any of that. But that's my choice, and people also have personal choices as well. So we should never be dictatorial about what's happening, but if we can make people aware, and clearly from this data, we know that we need to do a little bit more on the younger age groups. But effectively, who makes the choices with the younger age groups? It's not them.
Parents. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think not jumping into the junior wellbeing score too much, but obviously we're building that at the minute and working through that and piloting it at the moment. And one of the questions within there is activity. So just like it is on the adult one, but the demands are different. So NHS guidelines are for daily activity for children. And again, if that's not being provided at schools, is it
It's
being reached
hard,
outside
isn't
of that?
it? Because everyone instantly you talk about kids and everyone goes, school should do it, school should do it. And I feel for the schools, I do, because it does always come down to them. No one goes to parents should be making sure they're going out and doing this, that, and the other. But there has to be something as a nation
Yeah,
that we go,
look,
control them.
I've got. It's obvious what the answer. School should do it. School should do it. Okay. Do you remember when you had to parent your child during the pandemic? Oh my God, I'm like that. No, please, not ever again.
Exactly, schools should do it.
Remember that bit. That's the bit that the schools do, and school teachers are educated to the point to teach your kids and do the best job that they can. It's a bit like the NHS. I said, if we don't look after these people, we don't put the right support networks around them or the right expertise around them, instead of just sending some 16-year-old in with a football to get the kids running around, which, by the way, that's not a bad thing, but let's have structured practice with education running right the way through it.
Absolutely.
SAQ. I mean, no plug here, but we own the rights to SAQ in the UK, and we've got a big schools project that's coming. SAQ fundamentally is about teaching movement patterns and getting kids doing things that can then enable them to be better at sports. If you've got better moving children and adults, by the way, then effectively they will have better experiences throughout sports. We all remember going back to schools and you'd have that group, which, let's be honest, that was us, that were really good at all sports. And then you'd have that middle group that were okay, and then you'd have the other group that really didn't want to be there. I mean, I never felt that, but imagine if you felt like that.
Well, I've had clients that I now train that didn't do activity since school because they hated PE. It put them off it. They didn't like doing sports, and they didn't do it through the age group we're talking about, the 25, 35, 45.
What a way to turn someone off running, though. Suddenly you turn up at school and you're doing cross country. Do you know what I mean? Our teacher used to send us down to the local pub. We used to have to get the landlord's name and then run back. And it was like a 5-mile run. But it'd be chucking down with rain, absolutely foul. And that was going. But then when you bring something like SAQ in, you suddenly now bring in a different element to it, something that's exciting, something that's different, something that everybody. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be a runner to do SAQ. You just need to listen and learn in terms of the skill set, and then you pick it up, and there's something for everybody. So if you can bring those sorts of things in, it does then go, actually, I don't have to be good at netball or cricket or football to enjoy PE. There's more to this.
Yeah, it's taking it back to the fundamentals. It's like not everyone likes maths, not everyone likes English, but they're fundamental. We have to study them. And I think for me, the sports are the extreme side of it. I say coming from sport myself, but not everyone has to like sport. We're not saying that. But it is a World Health Organization guideline that everyone does activity. So it's the education of how we get people to that point, not pushing them to do half marathons, triathlon, sport, whatever it is.
Yeah, we've got to do things different. I think that's clear. I mean, we should probably move on as well. We won't be here all day, but and this is what it does. I mean, we know all this data. You're seeing it for the first time. These are the conversations that need to be happening, and they're great.
Absolutely. So delving on to gender, again, headline stat: female group recorded the highest average wellbeing score. So as shown on that graph there, for both 2021 and 2022, females scored highest overall in terms of wellbeing. Importantly, the range of scores between genders decreased by 2 points this year. So there was a big gap last year, as you can see on there, between female, male, non-binary, but that gap has closed an awful lot, which is positive. Again, we're seeing, although there's decreases in wellbeing scores from 2021 to 2022, that range is getting smaller. Also, interestingly, nutrition and health scores were close between all three gender categories we have there. So they were not far off each other in terms of those, but the movement was the big difference. So there was almost a point difference in terms of movement ability, females to males, with non-binary sitting sort of in between.
That's
so again,
interesting though, when you think it, sport tends to be more, well, the perception is sport tends to be more dominated from a male perspective. So you think there'd be more movement, not necessarily gym orientated, because this isn't about a gym, it's about overall movement, isn't it? So, but you would think it's that's a lot more even, but clearly not. Clearly, it's a.
So going through the movement questions, you have the ability to touch your toes. Typically, again, based on research, females will be better than that than males for anatomical reasons. And again, a lot of research sort of backs that up. Raising arms overhead, running upstairs, walking downstairs, sitting and standing for a chair, balance. And then you've got your weight pickup, your press up and things like that. But again, these are all fundamental movements. So it's, again, tearing away from kind of the sport side of it and things like that. It's can you move to function in daily life? So again, if you're saying males typically tend to do more sport or things like that, then it's even more worrying for me because those are the ones that are sort of behind on fundamental movements. So yeah, I think it is interesting, and again, throws up so many questions, throws up so many conversations that I'm sure we can sit here all day and have.
Was that classic one, was it, Lex, when we came up with the score in like 2020 and we sat in the office, didn't we, in the shed in Harborough? And we're like, right, come on, let's go try it on somebody. And as Lex said before, it was a physical thing. And we tested this physically. We went into a Cushnet, so Titus and Footjoy, where we've got a corporate training shed. And, you know, we've got 76% engagement, by the way, in that company. So that's a lot higher than the 15%. Wow. But there you go. Maybe there's a tip in there somewhere where to go with the industry. But fundamentally, we ran downstairs. The next person that came in and joined, which unfortunately for him was like 30 seconds after we ran down the stairs, middle of the day, he was a runner and a good runner. He was doing, you know, sort of 1 hour 30 sort of half marathons.
Wow.
So, you know, that's somebody that you kind of go, okay, in his peer group, he's known as the runner. He's a business owner, which is why I was able to skulk off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and come and do a session on his own. But he was joining the gym. We said, oh, do you mind if we just trial this on you? So went through everything and we're like, okay, well, he's fit and healthy. Let's be good. And then we said, right, can you put your arms above your head? And I'll turn sideways because otherwise you won't get the full effect. And he just went, and I went, no, above your head. And he went, no, that's it. And literally he could not take his hands right up to there. So fundamentally, 2 things. Number one, wow. You know, he was in his early 40s. And we're like, right, okay, so what do you do then? And you wouldn't believe this, but this was pre-pandemic. He owned his own PR company, and he said, well, I just sit over my laptop all the time like this. I'm like, wow, look where we are now, right? Look what happened in the pandemic. So what's happened, what's changed? But also from his own personal point of view, knowing full well, you know, as a published author of a running book, if you are in this position, it's going to affect your running because you're not going to be back. You're not going to be able to get your arms.
Yeah.
You know, so all of a sudden you're like, hang on a minute. And this is when our brains went, and we're like, hang on a minute, how fast could he run? If we sort him out how fast. And so we went to our sports bit, but from the well-being point of view, that's not good. That is not good. So, you know, it's that thing of movement and making sure that just because you do sport doesn't mean you're healthy.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
So, you know, but yeah, I think, look, it's changing. It's good. All of the, you know, the Spartan things and the obstacle course races and the inclusive fitness, you know, all of the Fight Club stuff that's out there, you know, it's definitely a more level playing field. I think it's quite an archaic view of blokes do sport. But I do understand because, you know, you get male cricket teams and, you know, I think it's just an excuse, to be honest, to disappear for the day myself. But, you know, we are leveling that point out.
It's a sport, you know, Glenn. It is genuinely a sport.
Oh, cricket?
Yeah, some may argue, but it is.
Yeah, I would have called it a game, but I'm only I got a few mates
to darts and snooker.
Yeah, I know. But you know, activity is good, and I think the activity levels are. I mean, I saw a report the other day saying that activity levels were down. Well, we disagree with that on the people that we surveyed. So all of a sudden, you've got conflicting arguments. But what are people doing? Are they doing stuff that's inclusive? You know, and are we just generally getting people out there doing more stuff? I think it is changing, but it's positively, and you'll see that from our stats. But what are people doing, and what are they doing to help themselves do the thing that they want to do? So there's no
I
point.
think I still think there's too much focus on this. How many people are members of gyms, and we use that as a record of how healthy the nation is. And you're still going, well, in actual fact, and I think we've talked about this before, but we may have 15% of people or 20%, whatever the score is these days, of people members of gyms. But how many do play sport? How many walk regularly the weekend? How many go running outside, cycling outside? I mean, I live in North Yorkshire, and every man and his dog's on a bike up here. But are they members of gyms as well? I doubt
Probably
it.
not. Probably
Absolutely
not.
Doubt it. So they won't fit into any record unless it's a survey like this. They're not going to fit into any score that they're doing. So to say our nation is only 15% of us are healthy and being active is just nonsense. It really is, and it could be anywhere up to 60-70%. But we don't have that data. That's the challenge, and this is the sort of thing.
Absolutely. And the education will show that, if you are on a bike, and I'm a cyclist now, I don't know if I can actually call myself a cyclist. I've got a bike, but I train and do my gym stuff. And I've got a friend of mine, Chris Pedden, who, he's a cycling coach, strength specialist, and he's an ex-cyclist, and he's always banging on about it on LinkedIn. Check him out. Do your strength training if you're a cyclist, and he's working with professional cyclists, and lo and behold, guess what? The people that he works with tend to win world championships and titles and things. And it's like, it's not rocket science. And I know this from being a performance director for 10 years in professional football and rugby and other sports. It's the gym stuff complements the sports people. Don't just do your sport without the gym stuff, but equally, the gym stuff can be part of your activity levels. It can be part of your recovery. And so it's trying to pitch how we are there with our expertise, with all of our coaches, that we can support everything that's out there, rather than segregating everything out and going, oh, no, they do this and I go there and da-da-da. Let's just, if we can educate people into why we do what we do, bring the whole thing together, then I think we'd get more memberships. And I think it would go from 15% north. But, it's just trying to get that message out there. But instead of talking about what people do, let's talk about how people are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely agree. Bringing that onto training goal, then one of the questions we asked before the Wellbeing Score, so this is not necessarily a question within the Wellbeing Score, but one of the demographic questions before, is understanding what people's goals are. So we can see here in the pie chart, by far the most common goal is lose weight. We've seen that both years, always around that 40% mark for people's goal. So 40% of the nation, if you like, goal is to lose weight, followed at 21% this year by be fitter, and followed by be healthier at 16%. So in terms of common goals there, you can see a big swing in one way. So perhaps what you'd look at, the reasons people would join a gym, potentially to be stronger or build muscle. They're smaller categories within that pie chart there. So again, it's understanding the breakdown of goals and what people want to achieve and relating that back to the Wellbeing Score. As you can see in the table, the goals ranked there in terms of how they performed Wellbeing Score wise. And this is really interesting to us. So with these goals, we had a map in mind of how we'd estimate people to progress through them. So again, as a coach, you're thinking, right, be healthier first, get all your health things correct, and then perhaps if you need to alter your body composition, you could look to lose weight or build some muscle, and then your more sports and fitness goals, if you like, are to be fitter and get stronger. And obviously correlating that to this, we can see the top three goals are be stronger, build muscle, be fitter. Whereas on the other end of the scale, you're looking at be healthier, improve mental well-being, and lose weight towards the bottom there.
Do you not think sometimes that's because things like be healthier, improve mental well-being are not something, or they're a lot harder to quantify for a person in their head, whereas be stronger, that's an easier thing. Have more muscle. I can quantify. I look better and whatever. Whereas something like be healthy or improve my mental well-being, that's a harder thing to quantify. Yes, I'll train for that, but it's harder to set a goal for that necessarily. So I'll get that will be a consequence of achieving that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think it is hard to sort of quantify. But I think, again, we all know, although we're asking for these individual goals, they're all related. They all link into one another. So if you are fitter or are feeling better about your body composition, that's likely to improve your mental well-being. And vice versa. If you're looking to build muscle, you will naturally get stronger, probably as part of that process. So I think this is a really interesting one, and I think looking at how the Wellbeing Score changes based on someone's perception of their goal, perhaps if you could put it that way, is interesting. And again, it's something I feel like we can positively impact. That if people look to improve their Wellbeing Score, we'll see these average scores increase. Because again, as a coach, if someone comes to me and is looking to be stronger and build muscle, and they're hitting 15 out of 20 on their Wellbeing Score, there's definitely things we can improve on before we look at the training side of things.
Absolutely.
So again, boosting all of those scores up closer to that 20 mark is what we want to see next year.
Yeah, and I think part of the fact with all these training goals is that if you just subtract recover from injury, although if you do all of those things and go to the gym and you do activity that you do it correctly, then you'll reduce injuries, funnily enough. So if you go with the goal of well-being and you do a program, let's just chuck a few things in there, hits, let's do some cardio, let's do maybe even some Zumba or aqua aerobics or whatever it is that gets you motivated, you will naturally become stronger. You will naturally build muscle. You get fitter, which makes you healthier, which gives you a better mental well-being. And guess what? Lose weight. So it's that thing of that. We kind of separate everything out into these goals. Which look, the Be Stronger. You know where the Be Stronger people are. It's the youngsters that we always picture a cheap membership to, where they just go and chuck weights around. And whether they're doing the right stuff or not, my wildly ranging hypothesis on that would be that they might be the ones that are recovering from the injury a little bit later on. So effectively, let's stop being what we've always been and try and do things more holistically and better, because if you do activity, all of those are more positive. You have better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think one thing just popped into my head now, but would be really interesting to convey, is looking at outcomes for each of these goals. So like I say, if you Be Stronger, how do we quantify that? And how does that correlate to Wellbeing Score? Because again, I'd put money on, if their Wellbeing Score is higher, they see bigger improvements in their strength.
Absolutely.
So I'll jot that down as one for next year.
And what's the one thing that we talk about as we go forward in life, I'm in my 40s now, and, I've changed the way that I train. But, as you get older, what do people always talk about? Osteoporosis, what do you need to do? Lift some weights, move something, resistance training, so, there is this thing that it's not the domain of the youngsters that just want to go in there in their vests and look at their guns in the mirror and all this sort of stuff.
I think it's the education point. What education we do have out there has been pushing a lot more in terms of the weight training. If you look at the way the industry's going now with a lot of the HIIT training and CrossFit and stuff like that, that's really coming on strong at the minute. A lot of it is around weights, so it's cardio with weights. So gone is the emphasis of getting on a treadmill or a bike for half an hour, whatever. And now people are training with weights, which is really positive move, I think, overall, because it's getting all these people my age and above, so the sort of 45 plus, who traditionally, probably wouldn't have used weights, especially from a female point of view. I think weight training in women now is massively increased from where it was even 5 years ago. So I think that's a positive change on that. We just need to keep emphasizing the benefits and make sure the information that is out there and the information that's being given is correct. Because, like you say, you don't want people going in, because otherwise that recovering from injury will start going up the list.
Yeah. I completely agree with you in principle, but just skipping ahead to this slide, we've actually seen a 7% decrease in resistance training from 2021.
And there's your not 100% capacity back in the gyms.
So I think I completely agree, Ryan. The message and the understanding about resistance training is getting there. But I think there's still an awful lot more work to do in terms of converting that into numbers based on, obviously, the research we're seeing.
Now, that is interesting, because Yeah, I'm quite surprised with that.
Yeah, I can tell. It's and this is the thing, and this is, we're not trying to. We don't know what's going on in the industry 100%. Nobody does, but from what we hear from people, and the confidence levels of people still are mixing, and that's why all these rugby clubs have gone bust, because there's nobody going and watching the games as much anymore, and they've got budgetary problems. It's where gyms are. Gyms are still not recovered. They're not. Not all of them, and you can't paint the industry with one big brush. There are different areas, but people have changed their habits. What we need them to do is improve their habits, and this is the thing: is taking what and then making those changes. What we know, and what everybody should be educated on, is that resistance training answers a lot of problems when it comes to health and well-being. And fundamentally, whether you're doing body weight stuff or whether you're doing weight training or whatever, resistance training is something that needs to be taken seriously, because it makes a huge difference, and it would take the burden off the NHS.
Absolutely.
Just to follow that up with some good news.
Bring it
what
back.
We have seen is an increase in 23% in activity from 2021. Wow. So again, putting these two questions together, me and Glen had a good chat about obviously why we think this might have happened and things like that. And you think back to the pandemic, there was a big push on activity. It was the only thing we could do at one point to get out of the house, and that it looks like that's a habit that's stuck with people. So whether it's going for the daily walk, or potentially getting a dog and having to walk it every day now, or whether it's taking up a new sport post-pandemic, whatever that may be, there's been a big increase in activity. And then with the resistance training, a lot of people, exercise equipment was top of the list for people to buy in COVID, wasn't it? So whether that's now no longer being used, now people potentially can go back to the gyms but might not be. It's not as available as doing those workouts at home, might be a cause for that decrease there. But yeah, we've seen activity go one way, resistance training go the other way for this year.
I guess 2022 is a bit of a switchover year, wasn't it, in terms of from the pandemic back into some sort of level of normality. So it'd be interesting to see how those numbers change or continue of next year's school. Because although 2021 was technically the end, wasn't it, of the pandemic, within retail, it's this year it's really taken a while to get back into any level of normality. So you're right. I wonder how many of those or this is people training at home, going for a walk, cycling, whatever it is in their own domain. And then obviously, and that's why weight training is down, because they don't have the facilities or didn't have the access. And then obviously going forward, 2023 might be different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think those yearly trends are going to be so important to monitor. I mean, since we started this, we've not had a normal year. So we haven't really got that baseline, if you like. But yeah, monitoring those trends over time.
But the great thing will be is because you haven't had a normal year, Alexa, you'll be able to see those trends quite distinctly.
Yeah.
That'll be the great thing, and you'll be able to then say, well, this is because of that. You'll be able to create proper theories on as to why it has happened. Whereas I guess at the minute, because you've got the sort of 2 years, we're still working out, going, okay, this is give another 2, 3, 4 years on top of this, when you've got hopefully some normality. You never know. But yeah, we'll be able to, trends will stick out a mile, and we'll be able to take action based on those trends, which will be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing it back to this final slide we've got here, something new again we did for this year is look at, in terms of here, wellbeing by influence. So looked at each and every question, so the 20 questions, and looked at the average score for those that passed that question, average scores for those that failed that question, and therefore with those two values we can look at which questions have the biggest influence on your overall well-being. So as we can see here, the functional tasks of sit and stand, walking upstairs, even hinge there, along with your balance and mobility, are fundamental to improving your overall well-being. So if you can't do any of those things, you're likely to score lower on the well-being score. So I think the average well-being score, if you failed the sit and stand test, was about 8.
Wow.
So if people can't stand up from a chair unaided, again, that lack of mobility, the lack of movement, probably not doing resistance training, affects overall well-being a lot.
And I guess that potentially also indicates other health issues and stuff like that. So potentially not eating as well because they've got the health issues. I know when obviously I have chronic fatigue, so whenever I'm suffering really badly with it, thankfully not at the minute, but when I'm suffering really bad from it, my diet is shot, because the last thing I want to do is be stood there cooking nice food. I don't have the time, the energy, or quite frankly, the inclination. So it tends to be more beans on toast. It tends to be more soups. It tends to be, so you don't tend to eat as healthy or care so much, horrible way to say it, but you don't care so much about your nutrition when you're not well, when you're not healthy, and it does can have a major. So I can understand how those mobility scores then show up. If you're poor on that, which potentially is an indication of poor health, would then indicate on things like poor nutrition and your general overall score as well.
Yeah, and look, you know us for who we are now. We're not just the Training Shed. Training Shed is one company of the Human Health Group. We've got Wellonomics for corporate health and wellbeing, and we've got MyOp, which is all about creating better surgical care pathways. And all we've done, this is our big pivot that we did, which people know about during the pandemic, and we're taking what this kind of wellbeing information here and expanding upon it. But certainly within the MyOp business that we have, it's all about creating better surgical care pathways for hips and knees. And the average hip patient is 68. And if you remember what the decrease in wellbeing score was, what we found this year, fundamentally what happens for surgeries within the NHS is that they actually get cancelled. Why do they get cancelled? Because people are not fit enough for surgery.
Is that right?
So,
wow.
And so what we have is we have this massive backlog, but we also have this massively inefficient system, because the surgeons do what the surgeons do. They don't do all the health and wellbeing stuff. This is where our play is with the industry, is that we can support the NHS. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the staff at the moment. They're 144,000 people short. We're all over here going, we know how to keep people healthy and we can help you. And so fundamentally, we've got the wellbeing score in that business as well, because part of our journey within MyOp is it's not just about the surgery, it's about the health and wellbeing of people. Because if we can start people off at a better standard, less surgeries get cancelled, less inefficiencies in the NHS, but actually fundamentally people are better off. They recover quicker. They are better off in surgery. You actually end up using less anaesthetics or less staff nurses or whatever it is.
And I guess the challenge is as well, if they're fitter and healthier before they get to the stage of needing that knee operation, going into it, they're in a better position to recover whatever. If you're then trying to get someone healthy for an operation, it's so much harder, because automatically, if you're talking knees and hips, their mobility is massively restricted. So in terms of doing exercise and everything, you're now coming down to quite often more diet. And that's I always think that's a far harder, that might just be me, but it's a far harder thing to manage, I think, than exercise. I can go out and pound the street or go in the gym or whatever, and it's a mental thing just to get there. And once I'm there, I'm fine. But food and nutrition is a far harder thing to get right day in, day out than exercise. Now, if you're restricted because of your knees or your hips, the chance of you being able to exercise or exercise significantly to lose weight and whatever is a lot harder. I mean, Alexa will probably tell me off and say I'm wrong, but it's probably a lot harder to do that than it is to do the nutrition side. So I guess you want them fitter and healthier all their life. So when they get there, my dad's had a hip operation. He's ex rugby player and everything else, and he was fairly healthy when he did it. He was early 60s, I think. But he was fairly healthy when he had it. So his recovery, I think it was 8-10 weeks or something like that. It was phenomenal.
Yep.
Whereas usually it can be up to 18 weeks, can't it? Recovery from
and look, this is not a the Training Shed runs through all of it's our knowledge, that's our expertise. It runs through all of our group businesses under the Human Health Group. And this is not a MyOp chat, but we'd love to talk about that another day. And I'm sure Matt, who principally leads that, would love to do it. But
we've got you on again in a few months, so
I'll tell you a simple thing. We've done 100 patients beta tests for hips and knee surgeries, and we have reduced recovery times by half.
Wow.
Anyway, we'll leave that there. It's all to do with health and wellbeing.
An interesting one on this, I was reading last year's survey, and apparently the score is based on 2 coffees a day.
Yes.
I'd fail that every.
So do you know why it's 2 coffees a day?
Go on.
So the maximum recommended amount of caffeine that someone is supposed to have is 400 milligrams a day. So if you make a instant coffee at home, it's likely to be about 80 milligrams in that. So in theory, you can have a bit more.
I can have 4 happy days.
Whereas, not saying that. Whereas if you go out to a coffee shop, the amount of caffeine in one of those coffees can be up to 400 milligrams in one coffee. So that's where we had, again, you can imagine us putting this score together, getting the research behind it. That's where we had to draw the line at 2. And again, the numbers too on the Wellbeing Score, but when you have we do a Wellbeing 66 journey, or when you're working with one of our coaches, it's exploring that more. So if you say, no, I only have cups of tea, you can have 8 if you want.
Do you know what's interesting though? Is that's the sort of information that, I mean, I didn't realise that, and that's the sort of thing when scores like this come out are important for people to understand, because it's like going, well, like, I have 3. Well, actually, that's not good for you.
No, exactly. And one of the things I always say is, although on the Wellbeing Score it's a pass-fail thing, it's a yes-no thing. We know and understand that wellbeing is much more complicated than that. But you have to start somewhere. You have to start that conversation. You have to. But
that's what it does. It starts that conversation to make someone think and go, okay, instead of having those 3, 4, 5 or 6, depending on how many, depends what your job's doing at the time. But I'll switch those coffees for tea, for instance. I'll switch that coffee for something else. And it makes them make that conscious decision to go, actually, I wasn't aware of the impact of that. Yeah. Now I'm going to switch it to something else.
Sorry, Glenn, just to jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
Taking someone from 6 down to 4 still might not be a pass on the Wellbeing Score, but that's a massive improvement in their overall wellbeing. So it's, again, taking it beyond that yes-no into someone's individual journey of progress and acknowledging that.
Yeah, and we have a great nutrition guy called Harry Hewitson, and he has this detox. It's not really a detox; it's more of a reset. Detox is a wrong word to use, but it's more of a reset. And one of the resets is to you basically have to give up 5 things, and one of those is caffeine. So I have my 2 coffees a day. I've also got my genetic report that tells me that that's what I should do. No, any more than that, and I'm on the ceiling. Anyway, I was talking to Harry, and Harry's just like, look, caffeine, seriously, Glenn, caffeine's the hardest thing. I was like, I only have 2 a day. It'll be fine. He went, no, look, if anybody can give up caffeine before we start the reset on Monday, you'll do yourself a favour. So me being the competitive person that I was, Friday, cold turkey, done. The day before, I'd had a meeting, I think, with Roger Mickey from Active Nation and Kevin. And we'd been in this meeting, and I'd just been ordering coffees at the bar. So I'd had like 4 coffees. So I came off the cliff like this. All day on the Friday, my head was all over. I mean, I was useless, completely useless. However, I was the smuggest person going Monday, Tuesday the next week, because everybody went through the same thing. And, some of our guys in our business were drinking 7 cups of coffee in Wellonomics and stuff. And, they're not come from the kind of sports backgrounds and stuff. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize it had all, I've got clarity. I can think properly. I've got this and da-da-da-da-da. And, even for me on 2 cups of coffee, same with Alexa, we felt it. Try it. Give it up. Give it up for 3 days.
Do you remember our meeting the first day after when we had our first coffee again, Glenn?
Well, I think we were making up words, weren't we? You and I.
We were talking nonsense. But
I'll give it a whirl after I've finished my rowing thing. I can't do 2 things. So that's killing me without giving up coffee. But sugar's supposed to be the same, isn't it? I mean, sugars. They reckon the impact on the brain is as powerful as heroin.
Yeah, it's one of the other things as well. We'll get you on the nutrition reset. You'll see it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm back to drinking 2 cups of coffee. Says Alexa. But it's good to do it every now and then just to understand, what effect these things have on you. But, you certainly do make more conscious decisions once you know. I mean, looking at the list in front of us, caffeine and alcohol, what are they? They're drugs, right? We are addicted. We're an addictive nation. As human beings, we are totally on that caffeine train. That's it.
I still find it amazing how we can ban cannabis and we can ban all those, and yet the 2 at the bottom there probably have, well, not necessarily caffeine, but alcohol and sugar probably have more impact on our society than anything else we consume.
And they have the least effect, obviously remembering how this table works, they have the least effect on your overall wellbeing score. which is crazy. But the problem is everyone's addicted. That's it. Everyone has a couple of beers or whatever, or a glass of wine on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's our social construct that we've developed in this society, and caffeine has become a massive part of that now. It's like, oh, should we go let's have a coffee meeting? I mean, I've been invited to coffee Zooms. It's like, I'm on Zoom. What do I need coffee for?
Well, I'm quite lucky. I don't like Starbucks and all them. I find them too bitter. So I stick with the granulated stuff at home, which people find quite shocking. So I could probably have 3 cups and be safe. Well, I tell you what, if that's really fascinating, guys. It's and the work you guys put into that. Consider, I know you use it for your businesses, so it's not entirely something that you just do for the fun of it. But the fact that you do give this back to the industry, I think is quite fantastic, because a lot of businesses that do the work that you do would hold on to this data. It'd be theirs. They'd use it for the business. They'd use it as for their own competitive edge. And that's not what you guys are doing. I know you guys use this really well in your training shed, because you have your 66-day plan, don't you, and everything else that you do, which I think is fascinating. And we'll talk more next time we get you on about that, because I think it's what you guys do with a training shed and how you take this data and actually use it for your clients is fabulous. And I think it would be a really good way to follow up, to show people how to use the Wellbeing Score, because there's some great data in here, but then taking that practically and going, okay, this is what we've got, this is how we use it, I think would be really important for a lot of clubs. So we'll talk about that next time we get one.
And look, we're not gym people. We're health and wellbeing people, and we're educators at the end of the day, and we'll work with anybody and everybody. We need to be relevant. We need to be relevant as an industry and treated with, the respect I think that everyone deserves. But we've got to earn that respect, and we've got to do things differently. And if we can become that purveyor of knowledge and data as to what's actually happening, and come together as an industry, then I think it's powerful. I think we can make a huge change.
It's a far more powerful approach using data and pushing this than it is going with a begging bowl for reduced VAT and whatever to help our industry. Going with really powerful data, going, this is where we are, guys. This is what we need to change. This is how we're going to change it. This is what we need to do. It's far better going to our new Prime Minister and going, this is how we do it, than going, can we please have some money? I really don't think that's the way.
Nothing would make us happy, as you could probably imagine. Look, collaboration is where it's at nowadays, and we need to collaborate with people. We're up for anything. We've got some things in the pipeline which we won't, disclose just yet until they're over the line. But we are really behind this whole thing of the wellbeing movement and trying to change the way that we do stuff. Nothing would make us happier, than to be bowled down to Westminster and sit there and talk to somebody. Seriously,
Brilliant.
on behalf of, not the training shed, the industry, because we've got a purpose and we need to serve it, but we need to prove what it is that we can do before anybody takes us seriously. If I'm being honest.
Well, let's hope Rishi puts someone in that position that actually takes the industry seriously, and then they'll be able. We'll see what happens with over the next few weeks, but we'll leave it there. I think. Well, one thing I would like to ask you guys, because obviously you're incredibly motivated individuals, a pair of you. I always ask it on my podcast, and I'm not going to leave it till the next one. In terms of what motivates or who motivates you, I try and avoid saying family, because we all quite often that is that, but I don't mind you saying that, because my dad is my biggest motivator. But in terms of what motivates you guys to do what you do, because you've both had brilliant careers as athletes, and now you're doing some amazing things in our industry in the field of fitness and wellness. So it'd be really good to know who gets you. We'll start with Alexa.
Oh, I was going to drop Glen in first.
I was glad he went to you first.
So is it who, or is it what?
It can be a person or something that motivates you. What gets you doing what you now do?
I think hard to pin down to a person without saying family. I got the note that you don't want me to say that. But I think a big motivator for me was coming from the sports background, and being in the research and the data side of things then, and acknowledging and seeing the gap between that and the general population. I think a rewarding thing for me is when do a couple of group PTs and coaching sessions and things like that, and when the other clients can answer the clients' questions and I can stay quiet, that's brilliant, because they've picked up on the information, the education.
Absolutely.
One of my goals is always to give them enough knowledge and them understand it that they could be coaches themselves. So I think passing on that education is a real motivator for me.
Brilliant. Glen?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's the same, because, and saying that we had exceptional careers, I might have to just caveat that with it didn't take off for me. But fundamentally, I'm competitive, and I always want to be better, always. And you can always do something better. Nobody knows everything. And if you work together, I think you can achieve massive things. And I think that's what I see in this industry. We're not from this industry. Spent 10 years in professional sports, working as a performance director, almost getting there, but not quite happening. But everybody was fit and healthy and performing well. We won leagues, we did all that sort of stuff. So, I'm now in this space. What can be better? How can we make that better? And fundamentally, first of all, you've got to understand what the problem is. And, we've got great people at the training shed. There's great people in the industry. And I just don't think we're being utilised properly. But I also don't think we're making, we're doing ourselves a real disservice at the moment. And we are going to miss a massive opportunity in something that has to change. We cannot continue in the same vein. The well-being of the nation is getting worse. We've just proved it year on year. I hate to say it will be worse next year. That's my prediction, because we're going to go out and get more data. But let's understand that, come together, educate, work together. As an athlete, I was always like, well, I can only control the controllables, right? That's me. And, I don't worry about competition or anything like that. But fundamentally, if we can all understand what it is that we should be doing, I think we're going to be in a better place. But, fundamentally, yeah, it's the same as Alexa. It's just making sure that the people that you work with don't need you anymore.
Fantastic. And on that note, we will leave it there, guys. We will put your guys' details at the end of the podcast, so people can get in touch with you, and obviously if they want to, obviously take it further. All about collaboration. So let's start collaborating more. But I really appreciate your time this morning, guys, and we will see you probably in about 4 weeks' time.
Excellent.
So really appreciate that.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yes, thanks, Ryan. Take care.
Brilliant. I will do all the cuts and pastes and everything and get this because it's 12 o'clock. So I know you've got your other one in a minute, so we'll jump off. But I'll do all the cuts and everything, and I'll make sure you guys have got a copy before Thursday. So yeah, but really appreciate it, guys. Let me just stop recording. Where's recording?